Jarvis, drop my needle.
Hello, this is the hardcore legend Mick Foley, and if you are interested in listening to idiots, you came to the right place. Have a nice day.
Woo! That's an attention getter.
He's a very strange young man.
He's an idiot. What we're dealing with here is a complete lack of respect for the law.
Oh my God, he's an idiot.
You know, of course, that you're out of your jurisdiction.
Personally, I think you're an idiot.
But that's the evidence in the car.
I was going into Toshi Station to pick up some power converters.
Always like to keep my audience riveted.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, friends and fiends, and welcome to Free Range Idiocy, the podcast about everything, but mostly just the stuff we like. The Old West was full of excitement. Cattle rustlers, outlaws, boom towns with the promise of a quick fortune, saloon ladies with a promise of a fortune of a different kind. However, the reality is probably a little closer to the smell of cows blissfully covering up the scent of those working with cows who hadn't bathed in a couple of weeks. Whatever the real deal is, it's home to one of our favorite movies of all time, one that we've been referencing for a couple of years, as well as planning an episode for around almost as long. So saddle up and skin that smoke wagon, because we're talking about Tombstone in this episode 113. I am your Uncle Todd, and with me, as always, is the man who once won a water pistol quick draw contest and has been living off that notoriety for the past 30 years. He has been my partner in Idiocy for over 2 decades and dreams about riding off into the sunset and into a gigantic steak. I give you the man they call Tim.
Bang, bang.
Okay, so now we're...
And salutations, my friend.
Now we're tying Tombstone in with Cactus Jack. Okay,
well, you got to work the two of them in.
It's Tombstone, Arizona, not Truth and Consequences, New Mexico. Okay, which, quite honestly, one of the most badass town names ever. Right after Tombstone. So, you know what? I'll allow it.
That is fantastic. Truth or Consequences, New Mexico.
Yeah, I think it's Truth and Consequences. I believe.
Oh, is it Truth and? Okay, gotcha.
I think so.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
all
I'll
right.
have to. I could look that up because we do live in the interwebs age, and all of the knowledge of humankind is at our fingertips. But I'm still lazy.
Well, how are you, sir? Nonetheless, Cactus Jack or otherwise.
I'm your Huckleberry. I am
nice.
so ready for this episode. I'm actually. Well,
It's
I
been
say
like
that
a year
now.
in the making, hasn't it? I mean, we talked about this like last year, and this has been literally the kick the can episode. So.
At least, for all of you out there listening in podcast land, we may be idiots, but we do actually organize things. So we will actually brainstorm and have a schedule of what we're going to be talking about, and we always toss this in, and something always comes up. So the fact that even today, I'm thinking man, maybe that Week in Geek episode, the Week in Geek item, maybe that could be an entire episode. No, we have to do this episode. Finally, it can't be procrastinated anymore. It has been procrastinated to whatever, happens after procrastination. Nothing usually happens after procrastination. That's the whole point of procrastination. Anywho, I'm doing fine. How about yourself, sir?
I'm well. Feeling fit, but not as fit as you. I think you're carrying a little extra gold around your waist these days, aren't you?
It's not gold, actually. I believe that was just sheet metal that was cut into laser cut into it. But yes, it's a little bit big for a belt buckle, but it is suitable for framing. Yes,
there you go.
Yes, and
Very
of course,
nice.
the man they call Tim is referring, of course, to the fact that I participated in my first ever powerlifting meet this past weekend, and most importantly, before anything else, I did not break myself. That was
goal number 1.
Exactly. When
goal
you're
number
in your
2, do not go to the ER.
Yes, when you're well, I mean, even if I did go to the ER, I've still got a couple more visits before I catch up to you. So let's.
Well, fair enough. I hold that is my own goal that I hold is number of visits to the hospital.
What was that old joke? I think it was actually Colin at Carnegie when he was talking about, about he had a heart attack. He had 2 heart attacks, and he says, "I now lead Richard Pryor 2-1 in heart attacks in the comedian's health pool." He says the way it happened was, Richard had a heart attack, then I had a heart attack, then Richard set himself on fire. I said, "Screw that! I'm having another heart attack." It's like, oh my gosh. But yes, I was in a powerlifting meet, and I won I won my group or division or whatever you want to call it. I'm pretty sure I might have been the only person in the division, but I don't care. That sucker is all mine. I've got a nifty little like laser cut trophy kind of thing that is suitable for wall hanging, and it's mine. All mine.
And you are now 1-0 in competition. As I dubbed you over the weekend, you are now the Goldberg of powerlifting, sir. So
I'm closer to Gilberg, both in notoriety and in looks, actually. So
and in yelling acumen.
Well, that too. No, actually, as far as yelling acumen, I could probably rival Goldberg. I can get a good yell. I've got some lungs on me. I just don't have the muscles and like that one bulging Popeye thing that he had going whenever he would get really excited. Yeah, no, I can't quite match that. Bill Goldberg definitely has that, amongst many other things on me, including like total earnings and, being on speed dial from WWE, although not quite as much these days. I don't think.
Indeed.
I think we've seen the last of Bill in a wrestling ring, which
Bill's kind of worn out the whole come back and get an immediate title shot routine. So,
that if Vince were still in control, that would still be happening. But we are going to be talking some wrestling as well. But what we need to do is we need to shift focus here, because we promised Tombstone. We will deliver Tombstone. I promise you, unless some breaking news comes through in the next hour as we're going through this episode. Which, I mean, who knows what's happening in the world these days? So anything could happen. But first, we need to get into The Week in Geek.
The Week in Geek.
Feels so funky.
What do you got for us this episode, sir?
Well, call this our own version of Johnny Ringo versus Doc Holliday. 12 months ago.
I don't know if it's that, really. I mean, this might be more of like Ike Clanton and... and like the fourth Earp brother that didn't show up in Tombstone, like Phil Earp.
La dog. Savvy. All right.
Yeah.
So we have this goes back to last week, but felt it needed to kind of have a little bit of discussion here, just because of the sheer let's start with the press conference. So last weekend, All Elite Wrestling had their pay-per-view All Out, and after the pay-per-view, as they are typically to do, they had a quote unquote kind of after event press conference, post-game show, and Tony Khan, the owner of AEW, sat next to CM Punk, his newly crowned world champion, and what happened can only be described as some of the most entertaining 10 to 15 minutes I've ever seen. Awkward. Very awkward, very just all over the map, and very, very real. Very, very much. We'll get into the content in just a minute here, but basically, CM Punk starts a conversation with an interviewer and just starts to go off on in a very indirect way. Kenny Omega, Matt and Nick Jackson, who are known as the Young Bucks, who are all three executive vice presidents of AEW, and just he kind of launches into this tirade about this person that he was friends with at one point, Scott Colton, also known as Colt Cabana.
Now, hang on, I just want to ask you this, because I want to get your just first impression on this, because I just realized this. Is it just me, or throughout this entire I can't call it a press conference, because essentially it was one long repetitive harangue from CM Punk.
Yeah.
Is it just me, or did Tony Khan look like the groom at a wedding during the best man speech, who's had way too much from the open bar and just starts dropping F-bombs in his speech without any regard to the fact that grandmama and grandpa and everyone is sitting there? Like, did it not look like that, like somewhere cross between like a hostage situation and like, I'm going to immediately have to do damage control over this, and like you could see the like turning in his head, like, how do I spin this?
Half the comedy was watching Tony Khan's face.
Oh my goodness.
As Punk was going off. The other half of the comedy was just watching Punk do this while he was eating like a chocolate muffin.
Yeah.
And even when Tony Khan would speak and Punk was eating the muffin, it was watching Punk's face. Like he was just like, it was like totally, it was just this surreal scene where,
it was a tour de force performance overall.
But it wasn't. It was just a very real moment. And
and what about the bag of seltzers? What was it about?
Yeah.
What is it in his contract rider that he's like, he has such an odd number of seltzers? Because I counted them because they were sitting there the whole time. He had like 9 seltzers in a plastic bag.
He had a 9er.
I'm like, what is that? Like in his contract, like I want 9 lime spendthrift seltzers. Well, could we get you Polar? I said okay. I don't want any of that LaCroix crap. Nothing bougie. I want something that's Target brand. Which was funny because I believe that is this Spendthrift like a Target brand or something, or is that?
I think so. Yeah.
But then he mentions like that they couldn't manage a Target, and I'm like, is Target sponsoring this, or is like CM Punk got his own deal? Like, we going to see him like the CM Punk collection?
Sponsor. Yeah, right.
That would be great. Anyways, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I had to get your thoughts on that because it all just sort of clicked into place for me as you were mentioning that.
Well, but okay. So let me take a step back. So 12 months ago on our show, we around this time actually were just kind of basking in the glow of the return of CM Punk and how well that was done by AEW and just how amazing the crowd in Chicago was. The reaction was something that you rarely see in wrestling unless it is a major moment, and it was just this really kind of for me following wrestling for as long as I have, it was very good to see him come back and be working for a company that would give him kind of that honest shot that you kind of felt as good as he did in WWE that he never really got because of the constant bickering he had with Triple H and with Vince.
No, it was almost getting over in spite of management. Like, they were reluctant to put the title on him. They were reluctant to do anything, and in fact undercut him the whole time. Main event. Which is remarkable when you figure like, it's about making money. This guy will make you money, but you're so like stuck in your ways and so hell bent on doing it your way that you actually subvert your own profit margin. Yeah, it's baffling.
So you fast forward 12 months to now, and CM Punk faced Jon Moxley for the AEW World Championship. He defeated him in what was really a classic match, just a really good back and forth, a lot of brutality. Jon Moxley, the former Dean Ambrose from WWE, just a complete psycho now in terms of hardcore, just brutal, like he has a very brutal style and is very much about that sort of hardcore aspect of things and in the ring. And so it was a rough match, but Punk came out the winner. And in the in the press conference, leading up to this event, there was some drama going on, and this drama is around these characters I mentioned. So Scott Colton, Colt Cabana, Hangman Adam Page, Nick and Matt Jackson, and Kenny Omega. And so I'll go back in time to kind of lay the story out, because Uncle Todd was kind of like amused by this when I sent it to him, just because of the sheer awkwardness and uncomfortableness that happens when you watch this. But also kind of
even
like,
if you don't know anything about wrestling, like it can still be entertaining on a level of just like, oh my gosh, you can totally tell everyone in the room is like, what the hell's going to happen next?
Right. And watching Tony Khan's face and all of it. And you're texting me of, who are some of these people? I don't understand. And so I'll try to lay it out for you and try to do this
some of them.
quickly.
I mean, I've heard of Colt Cabana, but I couldn't pick him out of a lineup. I was just like, what is the beef here?
So fair enough. So real quick, Colt Cabana and CM Punk came up through the independents during the 2000s. Punk obviously goes on to become more of the superstar. Cabana had his tryouts, I think, in WWE and other companies, and just seemed to kind of stay in that independent scene. When Punk left WWE, he did Cabana's podcast and talked about his departure and went into great detail about all the ways WWE had, kind of hosed him over in that scenario, and the health issues he was going through, to the point where I believe WWE sued him and Scott Colton.
Yeah, which is actually a time-honored tradition in wrestling, because it didn't used to be podcasts. It used to be like the dirt sheets, right? It was like the Wrestling Observer and all those, and all these guys would leave of promotion and then like just vent their spleen, and it would wind up in print in one of these magazines or newsletters. So it is kind of, Punk being such a traditionalist and knowing the history of wrestling, it makes total sense that he's and now I must go light the bridges on fire.
Mm-hmm.
I've already doused them in kerosene. It's just waiting for the match.
Yeah. And so I don't have all the particulars, and it really isn't, germane to the story, the details around, but long story short.
The Germans ain't got nothing to do with it.
Well, they don't. But Punk was paying some of Colton's bills for a while, I guess, and kind of dealing with the legal part of it. And at some point, the two of them had a falling out and went their separate ways, and no longer have a friendship and so forth. Cabana continues on in the independents, and at some point hooks up with the Jacksons, with Kenny Omega, and with those who are forming AEW. I don't understand, what I've read in a few columns, and I don't fully have the background on this statement, but apparently some of the things that Cabana was doing in the independents were like they took some of the things, I don't know if it was around how they were running the company or what they were doing with the organization, but he kind of inspired some of the things that they did for AEW. And so he has a much tighter and more positive relationship with Kenny Omega, with Matt and Nick Jackson. And so when Punk came back, there was this kind of question of how are those two entities going to coexist, because Cabana is in the locker room along with Punk. And Punk, of course, maintains that he and Cabana don't really talk. He has no, real interest in forging any relationship with him. He has no interest in screwing him over. But what ended up happening was back in May of this year, when Punk was feuding with then champion Hangman Adam Page, Page went out to do a promo around, kind of building up their main event that was happening at that pay-per-view, and decided to go off script. And I remember him saying something that seemed kind of backstage-ish in nature, but wasn't overtly. I don't remember him really calling out Colt Cabana by name, but just talking about how Punk is this, kind of sneaky politician who kind of works behind, he claims he's for the workers, but doesn't really deliver. And Punk wasn't out there and really had no ability to kind of speak back on it. And so it was kind of this scene of Page going into business for himself. And what happened shortly thereafter was, there was some rumblings that Punk wasn't thrilled with what he did, because again, it wasn't something that was planned. It was something that just he kind of did off the cuff. Punk wins the title. Punk then 3 days later breaks his foot and has to basically go on a 3-month sabbatical while he heals up and undergoes surgery. So nothing is really ever addressed on this until he comes back at the beginning of August, where he cuts his first promo, or it was his first or second promo since coming back. And he just runs down Page in a very, kind of brief segment of him, basically at the time he was going after Jon Moxley, who was the interim champion, and the two of them were going to face off. And so he says a few things about Hangman Adam Page where Page could not respond to it. He wasn't at the stadium that night. He wasn't planned to come down. And he basically really, in a lot of ways kind of subverts. He has this phrase, cowboy, SHIT. And Punk really subverts the gimmick and subverts that saying in what he did. I mean, he just did a masterful, like he always does with his wordsmithing and the way he does promos. He knows how to go surgical on someone when he needs to. And he went surgical on Adam Page. That caused a bunch of drama. Page is a close friend of Kenny Omega and Nick and Matt Jackson. There's a bunch of rumors that start that Punk is a cancer in the locker room, that he's trying to get Colt Cabana pushed out. He's the reason that Cabana isn't on TV as much anymore. And so you can kind of see the snowball starting, and it kind of builds up to the event. And so then the event arrives. We have the Moxley match. He wins. They do the press conference, and Punk just launches into this tirade about his relationship with Colt Cabana, kind of putting to rest any sort of, drama or rumors that were going on at the time, throwing Omega and the Jacksons under the bus as EVPs, which I believe his line was that we have EVPs that couldn't even run a Target, let alone a wrestling company or something like that, which I think is kind of unfair to people who manage Targets, because
there's a lot of stuff going on. It's not like that's a little job. Like there's a lot of stuff going on at Target. Like there's a lot of departments. You've got the unmentionables. You've got the sporting goods. There's a lot of stuff. I think that's a little derogatory to Target managers.
Yeah,
but proceed.
But so he just goes off on, and he very, very much calls out and is very candid about the fact that a lot of the rumors and internet gossip that was going on leading up to the event was driven by these EVPs that should have known better. They should have dealt with it in a different way. And so he got that off his chest, and just proceeded to just set the record straight on that. He eviscerates Adam Page again, calling him numerous names and, basically questioning his intelligence, which, quite frankly, if you're going to go into business for yourself on live TV and think you're going to get away with it with someone like Punk, that probably isn't the wisest move in the world.
No, that's taking a knife to a gunfight.
Oh, it is. And so after that, there really wasn't anything too, I think at one point Khan brings up MJF, who came back at the pay-per-view, and it was hysterical. Punk's eating a muffin while he hears this. The look on his face was priceless. And then he's like, he basically, forgive me for saying it this way, but he's like, I'm just destined to work with pricks.
Yep.
Which Khan's eyes just bugged out of his head. Like, is this not over?
Yeah. Oh, no. I thought we were out of the woods. Nope. We swerved back into the woods and we ran into a tree.
So then the cherry on top of this Sunday of an evening was that apparently after this press conference happens, there was a confrontation with Omega, the Bucks, and Punk, and his longtime associate and almost coach, who had brought him up through the independents, Ace Steel.
Don't forget Ace Steel's lady and Larry the dog as well.
Oh, his wife, yeah, Ace Steel's wife, and she was apparently caring for Punk's dog, who was at the locker room. And apparently, depending on which side you talk to, which really boils down to, people who walked in very genteelly and wanted to have a conversation versus kicking the door down and a fist fight happening. Eventually, it boiled down to fisticuffs, and there were suspensions. There is still talk of whether or not Punk is going to either leave AEW or be fired.
Well, they took the title off him.
And they took the title off him, but they took the title off him because he apparently tore his tricep, and he is now going to be out for about 9 months. So
now I wonder if he tore his tricep. Was it during the match, or was that
during
in
the match? Yeah.
Okay.
It was determined that he had injured himself during the Moxley match, and so that's when it happened. He had I guess he had some ice on his shoulder or on his arm at the time. I don't know.
I was distracted by the cupcake or whatever the heck he was eating.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, it's just complete bedlam right now, and I think the thing that really just kind of amazes me with all of this is just how you go from when he arrived 12 months ago and everything that followed the first 6 months, working with all the younger guys. Yes, he was winning matches, but he was making these younger guys look like $1 million. Really seemed like he was, enjoying himself. Really seemed like he wanted to give back to the business, and in the process, he was elevating the product with his presence, and they were trying to take advantage of it, rightfully so, because he's a superstar. And yeah, it's like the wheels came off the wagon, since we're keeping this in a Western theme, real fast. And so now you have basically Tony Khan with, honestly, that press conference made him look awful. I mean, just sitting there, not stopping it, not saying something, not telling him, let's take this up behind the scenes or something. Like he just sat there and just let Punk go, and it really he just didn't look like a leader. And for Punk's sake, I've always been a fan of his. I'm not as harsh as some people are with him, like they feeling like he's just gone over the edge. I mean, I read a lot about the behind the scenes stuff. The stuff he talks about with Colton is on the money as far as what I've seen reported. So I don't know what the deal is there and what's going on with him, but maybe there were some things that were going on backstage that he was behind, but it seems like depending on who you talk to, you're going to get two very different sides of what's going on there. And it's just, it's really a shame to see it kind of fall apart the way that it has, because it just seemed like they were a really good pairing for a really long time until egos got in the way. And he may be at fault as well. Maybe this is a product of his ego as much as it is the other guys, but the fact remains that there were some missteps, I think, on both sides, and not quite sure where we go from here. It's really a shame.
It is. Yeah. This is sort of like when you have the coaching flux, and I'll point out the NFL just because I'm most familiar with that league, even though I haven't watched it in many years. I watched it enough to have seen the ebb and flow of how coaching seems to go, is that you have the disciplinarian, the taskmaster, who gets stuff done and whips the team into shape. But then eventually the team gets tired of that. And it's usually after, either there's a downturn or some of the big players start getting older and they start getting more mature and they start feeling their importance to the team. And then the taskmaster / disciplinarian is kind of driven out because, they've tuned him out completely. They don't want anything to do with him anymore. And so then they bring in a player's coach. They bring in someone who's kind of like one of the guys who the players like and gets along with the players, and he strokes their egos and he knows how to deal with people and all that. Well, but then the team starts lacking discipline because nobody's there to really tell them what to do. So eventually the player's coach gets taken out. The players now, they're like, we need discipline. We need someone who's really going to instill, a lot of discipline and kind of confidence in the team. And who do they go to? They bring in a disciplinarian, a taskmaster, and thus we just keep going in this ever-winding vicious cycle, which results in guys like Andy Reid and Marty Schottenheimer being perpetually unemployed, even though you're not even really sure why, because they just don't get you over the hump ever. Well, actually, no. Andy Reid's finally got himself a Super Bowl ring, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
After 30 years of trying, which in Andy Reid years, because God, the dude just, I feel like I don't even want to make jokes about the dude's health, but he just does not look like a healthy individual. Like I really wish he would just start working some salads in just for the sake of his family. He's one of those dudes that you're just like, oh my gosh, he could go any second. Anyways, it's the same thing here. Like you have Tony Khan starting this company and everybody's happy because, you can do whatever you want. You can do this and that and the other. And they're so open to this and that and the other and blah, blah, blah. And we're the underdog. And so everyone's pulling together. Now they're not so much the underdog, even though they still are. WWE never wasn't outdrawing them. Like even Triple H said in that interview that you sent me, he was saying, so they outdrew our developmental league. Okay. Right. Like that was a big thing. Like AEW's outdrawing, WWE. Yeah. WWE NXT, which is their lower tier. It's like their semi-pro league. Okay, You're outdrawing them. Congrats. It's like, ooh, we outdrew the World League of American Football. That's nice. Boy, a little pat in the head and a cookie and you go away. But they never have outdrawn. They've never been bigger. They've never drawn more. Except for maybe individual shows, but overall, they were not a bigger company. Now they start getting that whiff of success, and now it starts going crazy, and now all of a sudden Tony Khan's like, hey, yeah, just do whatever you want. I'm just happy to be here. Now that's a liability. Yeah. Because ain't nobody really steering the ship. Nope. And that's a problem when you got a situation like this. And it's also a problem because he really, I don't understand. Number one, I don't understand how Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks are executive vice presidents, but yet Chris Jericho is nowhere on this masthead. I don't understand that. Yeah. Because I thought when he came in, I thought he had a piece of the ownership.
No. It was started by a partnership of Tony Khan. So Khan brought the money, and it was Cody Rhodes, Matt and Nick Jackson and Kenny Omega were four EVPs that started this. This is what they wanted to do. They were going to build a company that was going to be better, different. They were doing equal pay for men and women. They were accepting of, wrestlers regardless of lifestyle and that sort of thing. Like they were trying to be all the things that they saw WWE doing, in maybe if it's not in a public way and in whatever way, but
which are all good things. Which are
all good. Yeah, I mean they started off with a really great concept of what they wanted to do for the company, but
the problem is you can't have executive vice presidents who are also active wrestlers.
Yes,
it's a bad idea. And you can always point to, but it worked in this, it worked here, or it can work there. It's like, that's great. You're talking about the exception, not the rule.
Yeah.
And I was listening to to Uncle Corny talk about this. And he's like, you're not one of the boys anymore. You're Office. Yeah. Whether you're still wrestling or not, you're Office. And he was very critical of Omega and the Young Bucks. Like, those guys are executive vice presidents. They shouldn't have been going and talking to Punk. They should have been waiting outside the door at the press conference for when Tony Khan came out and said, all right, so what are we going to do about this?
Yeah.
You're management. You deal with that at a management level. He says,
yeah.
And the thing is, like, I'm not even pointing out the fact that, oh my gosh, they had a confrontation backstage. Like Cornette pointed out, that's been happening since the day before forever. Like that has happened in every single wrestling promotion that has ever existed anywhere. Like, there's always people getting, because you got like these dudes who are, they're all macho and want to outdo each other. And it's competitive. It's all competitive. So they're always going to be, whether you're friends or not, you're still competitive. And so, like he said, he's like, you can go to that room and you might not be planning on a fight, but you need to expect that one might happen.
Yep.
And the fact that 3 executive vice presidents of the company are going there, like, I was actually kind of surprised. Like, Cornette was very supportive of Punk, because he's like, you got 3-on-1 coming there.
Yeah.
And they're all higher up. I mean, you're the champ, but they're management. They're executive vice presidents.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is some level of bullying / labor dispute that's very contentious.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do? And if they start getting in your face,
Right. Right.
But yeah, it's all just, it's so foolish, just to me, the way it's set up.
Yeah.
Like, having active wrestlers who are all in the hunt here trying to make money, and then having them have that power over other people. Like, oh my gosh. So we're making what happened in WCW when you had Nash and you had Hogan and you had those guys. We're just making that official now.
Yeah.
We're just giving them the title, instead of saying that, like, Ric Flair is the booker in WCW, in spite of the fact that he's an active wrestler, which to me is just like, how does that make sense? I know Rick is a really good wrestler. He's one of the greatest ever, and he's probably your best guy, but why the hell are you having him? I mean, it's not even like if there's going to be favoritism. It's just when, Well, and that whole thing doesn't make sense to me whatsoever.
And not that this was related to the Punk Page drama, but to your point about the EVP thing, there, some of the comments I read in the days after were pointing to, Cody Rhodes jumping back to WWE and wondering, was there something going on, at that level and in that kind of organization or with those roles where, I mean, I think, I don't know if you watched the Austin podcast or the Austin show with him on, Stone Cold's
I hadn't yet. No.
I forget the name of his show.
I unsubscribed to Peacock for almost the last year, just because I was like, I'm not planning on watching any of this. But the fact that you can't watch and you can't watch the live shows on Peacock. Like, you have to get another subscription for that. I'm like, no, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
If you want to, if you want to include a tier where I can get the live, like, WWE shows somehow through that, then fine. But I'm not going to pay for like 2-3 subscriptions here just to try and make all of this stuff work. No, that ain't happening.
Right. But Rhodes in that interview was saying that he came to the realization that he should not have been an EVP. Like, he just, I want to be a performer. I do not want to do, I thought I understood what it meant to be management and to do that sort of thing. And through the experience at AEW, I came to realize what my limitations were. And
was very
candid about it. Yeah. And so I'm just wondering if, that, like you're saying, like that plays into it to some degree, that you just can't. You either have to, you can't be the coach and the GM, or you can't be the player and the coach. You have to pick one side and be it for the duration, and then be fully committed to the thing you choose to do. And
yeah, well, and you have to understand how things evolve, like, or even just how individuals, like, you go back to, oh my gosh, back in the 60s, 70s, up until, like, what was it? I think it was the 80s until, during his coaching career, like Red Auerbach was the coach, the GM, head scout, ran promotions, wore all the hats. And that was also because his owners were incredibly cheap. But he could do that. Now, is that a recipe for success for everyone? No. But at the time, you could do that because everyone else was kind of in the same model, and it's just the way it was done. Now, you could not possibly do that. And even when there's been times when you have coaches who have personnel say, I mean, and for better or worse, if you're a Patriots fan, you're one of these people who are like, well, Bill Belichick is essentially his own GM, and how has that been working?
Yeah.
0-1 so far this season, from what I've heard, from what I've seen at the gym on the TV as I was glancing around. But you have to separate some of these things, because there are certain individuals that can do many things. And again, going back to Triple H's interview where he talked about how, for all of his faults, Vince was able to shift out of one headspace and into another and make decisions quickly out of experience, but also just that's kind of the way his brain worked. That's not everybody. Not everybody is able to kind of hold those things all at once.
Mm-hmm.
And you should be very realistic about how you can do that, and what is people are capable of. And that's to me is like, that is the big Achilles heel for AEW right now, is you don't have a strong executive at the top, and you have active guys who are top guys right now.
Mm-hmm.
And how's that going to look a year or two down the road if one of them gets hurt, or if they're not top guys anymore?
Yeah.
How's that going to work out for them being executive vice presidents?
Right.
And it sounded all great and all, when everyone was around singing Kumbaya, but now starting to see like, this structure might not have been the best idea.
And yeah. And as soon as he started getting involved with the world title picture and all of that, that's when it seemed a lot of the stuff the wheels are starting to fall off. And, quite honestly, if as the executive vice presidents, if they did have a hand in spreading some of this vitriol, that was either unsubstantiated, not true, or, maybe not fully the truth of what was going on, then you're going to reap what you sow. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm not convicting them in the court of public opinion that they did it, but where there's smoke, there's fire. And it sounds like there's enough animosity on both sides that some of this is probably in the middle of what the truth is. And if there was provocation, and if there was that sort of thing, it just spirals. There's just, like you said, there's no anchor, there's no disciplinarian or no someone like a Vince McMahon or now Triple H, who is the man. And so Khan's trying to play that role, but not doing a very good job, because he's trying to let both sides kind of do their thing. And we just saw what happens when you do that and you don't put a tight control on it. So,
well, it's because of the way that he started it out, and he was the money guy.
Yep.
And they were the wrestling guys.
Yep.
And now you're in a position where the money guy is trying to assert the control that he probably deserves in many cases, because it's his money, it's his investment.
Right.
But those wrestling guys are never going to look at it that way, because they're the ones who are like, I'm the one who makes this happen. We are the ones who make this happen. Even though they're still they're going to look at it whenever it's convenient from the talent portion. And then when it's convenient, they'll be like, oh, well, we have to make these choices because we're executives, It's just it's a piss poor way of setting your company up. And that's going to be something that, quite honestly, I think this might be the thing that is going to be how AEW rises and falls, is if they can straighten out this. I don't know that they can, because I'm not sure Tony Khan necessarily has the huevos to handle some sweeping out of the corners.
Yeah.
We'll see.
So, overall, surreal scene, and just a just crazy. I mean, I don't want to prolong this longer, but just a quick hot take from you. What was your initial reaction when you watched it though? Like what was going through your head, even though you didn't have some of the context?
Just how bat spit insane it was. Like on one hand, I'm like, I kind of appreciate like, wow, this is kind of a cool thing to do, a post wrestling pay-per-view, to then have like a press conference, like it's a big fight. Like I appreciate the reality of that. As it's going on, I'm like, and this is why WWE does not do this, because setting someone down in front of a mic like this with total freedom to just do whatever the hell they want after, and air whatever dirty laundry, they just wouldn't do that. And I'm like, this is the textbook example of like, now forever and ever, amen. If anyone comes up with that idea, Triple H is just going to pull this up on YouTube, turn the laptop around, and say, any questions of why we don't want to do this?
Actually, they did it at their last big event. The
Are
Clash
you
of the
serious?
Cast.
They
Yes.
did?
Yeah, but
wow.
it's controlled.
Well, yeah, I mean, because honestly, even though Triple H is the new guy, he has way more control over talent and over people than Tony Khan would. Yeah. I'm surprised at that.
It's more part of the show than it is what it was for AEW. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like it's not as off the cuff. It's not as, when Roman Reigns comes out, he is coming out as Roman Reigns in character. You know what I mean? Like
it's not
loosey-goosey Roman Reigns where he can, make a joke and get a few laughs. Like he's kind of goofing off with the reporters. You know what I mean? He is still in acknowledge me mode, and playing the gimmick while he's doing it. So.
Okay, well that makes more sense. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, well, I know. I just put my foot in my mouth there. I'm just gonna,
you didn't know.
I'm just going to chew on this for a while. I think it's. I think when I was watching, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening. Like with a company that is doing all of like so well that this is. I can't believe that this crap is getting aired. Like, wow, this is kind of sucks.
There were times, just real quick for me, and then I think we'll X the other thing, and we'll just move into Tombstone here. But I will say for me, there have been times when some of back in my early years of watching wrestling as a fan, where you see two guys going at it and the animosity and stuff, and knowing some of the behind the scenes, especially with guys who had real animosity for each other, and kind of wishing it would go to a place where it was kind of that real. And now seeing it actually happen, you're just like, oh, sweet God, this is not, this is not as cool of a thing as I thought it was going to be.
No, it doesn't really ever seem like when they try and take real life and turn it into an angle that it ends well. Yeah. I mean, that's where you end up with like, oh, hey, Razor Ramon is having trouble drinking, or Scott Hall is having trouble with his drinking. Like, oh, that's really going to help that guy.
Right.
Or, oh, this guy's wife is cheating on him with this other guy. Like, oh yeah, that's going to end real well. Like, let's put whatever one of the Hardys and Edge and Lita, and let's make that an angle. Like, oh sure, this will end well.
Right.
I'm sure no one will be upset about this.
Yeah, no, it's unfortunate, and it'll be interesting if something with Punk is decided in the next couple of weeks, or if they end up parting ways with him before he's healed up, or if they use the 9 months and try to have this get smoothed over and have him come back. I honestly don't know how it's even going to work out, given what happened, because of the fact that there's just it seems like he's not one that lets things go very well, and
no.
I just sadly don't know how this is going to move forward. So we'll have to see if it's I think AEW can live if they cut CM Punk and stay with Omega and the Bucks, but as I read today or yesterday, if Omega and the Bucks were to be let go or they were to part ways with AEW, I think that would rip the heart and soul out of them. So I mean, like you said, I think there needs to be maybe an adjustment of are they still really EVPs or not, and kind of make some changes that way.
Well, the only thing is you're not going to take that away from them. I think the only way I mean I'm of the other opinion. I think the only way that this gets resolved is if those three do leave, because you're not going to get rid of an executive vice president any other way. You're not going to tell them, by the way, we're taking away your title.
Yeah.
Unless there's some massive buyout, but even then I can't imagine that they're doing well enough to do that, and then to also just not have any harsh feelings down the road. Like one way or the other, they're a ticking time bomb, whether it's because you're going to have to do something about them, or because you're just waiting for them to, for one or all three of them to start tailing off and to not be as over, and for them to then realize like, and then try and lobby their way still into main event angles and everything else. I think they got to go.
Yeah.
I think that's the only way you're going to do it, which will be interesting, because then where do you go from there? But I don't know. I don't even know all the people on their roster. So who knows?
Well, after taking this segment way longer than intended, that, my friends, is the Week in Geek.
I love how you always say, "Oh, that went longer than intended." Yeah, like you talking wrestling and then pulling me on it is going to just be a brief thing. Like, yeah.
Oh,
I appreciate the lie every time, though. Sweet, sweet, sweet lies. Just tell them to me, and whispering them in my ear. Indeed. Anyways, we are now going to talk a little Tombstone, because we're going to go from
here we go
from a fight at the United Center to the OK Corral, which seems about right, honestly.
Kind of the same.
Yeah. So I am Tombstone, of course, 1993. The Kurt Russell vehicle, starring a cast of thousands here. Oh my gosh, it's such a great flick. And I don't know, I can't remember if this was a big hit when it came out, but it has certainly taken on a life, as many movies have afterwards, of just a life of their own. And I am going to say, just right off the bat, honestly, the star of this movie, I know Kurt Russell is the top billed star. The star of this movie is Val Kilmer as Doc Holliday.
100%.
And that is the reason why it is so rewatchable. I was rewatching this movie right before we actually, when you texted me and were like, "Hey, are we recording?" I'm like, "Oh crap." I was watching it.
Yes, folks, this is how it happens. We decide on an evening, and then he goes and watches a movie.
Well, at least I was watching the movie that we were talking about. I wasn't watching Wanda the Wicked Warden on VHS.
Well, thank you.
But oh my gosh, just realizing how many great lines he has, and just how he kind of really holds together so many parts of the story, and is also just like, he is both the angel and the devil on Wyatt Earp's shoulders. It is absolutely wonderful, his part in this movie. But overall, I mean, what are your impressions of this movie, sir?
I mean, completely back what you just said. Like I was looking at the cast lineup, and last episode, we would run through some of the actors in some of the movies from '99, and I'm looking at this list. I mean, we would have to read almost every single person in this movie either was someone or became someone extraordinarily, popular as an actor or actress, after this movie. I mean, it's like an all-star lineup. It's really incredible, kind of this lightning in the bottle sort of moment where you have all of these people together. I mean, I'm scrolling all the way down. Terry O'Quinn, who became big through, the show Lost, was in this. Frank Stallone was in it.
Wait, who's Frank Stallone?
Ed Bailey.
That's right, because I remember he was. I mentioned, like, I read an article about Tombstone. They're like, "Oh, and Frank Stallone's like, what?
Yeah,
where the hell was Take Me Back? Where the hell was he? Was he sitting around were they singing that song off in the background somewhere? I was hoping, but no, they weren't.
Michael Rooker before Michael Rooker was Michael Rooker.
The Rook.
Oh my gosh.
Only had like 2 lines, and then it was just him like in the making sour faces, but it was so worth it.
Yep. Yeah, but no, I mean, this is a classic for me. This, when I watched it, I like you said, I did not see it in the theater either. This was a, at the time, VHS discovery that I made, and just was really taken with the, the style of it, the characters. Doc Holliday was just the best. Just iconic, the way Val Kilmer plays him. Kurt Russell, just incredible as the Earps, or as Wyatt Earp. And then, with Bill Paxton and, sorry, we got to scroll up, Sam Elliott, playing his brothers. Just all of them just had their moments where, they just had scenes that made them. And this just felt like, I was never one to get into Westerns, but I felt like this film took all the great things about, westerns that I think, like either my parents or even like on my father's side, my grandmother was very much into westerns, and I think my grandfather was as well. And I never understood why. They would have them on, like on TV playing like like an old western or something like that, and I just couldn't get into it. But there were, I remember there were thematic elements in those movies that I remember seeing, kind of come out in this one, and it's almost like they took all of kind of the good things and the best, the best, and plugged it into this and turned it into this really, great, roller coaster ride of, kind of the rise and the fall of the Earps and whoa, ladies and gentlemen, Wyatt's reckoning. Let me tell you.
Oh yeah.
It was fantastic, but having a lot of heart, and like you said, the thread through it all was Doc and his relationship to Wyatt. And so it wasn't a one-dimensional movie by any stretch either. I mean, it had layers to it, and just made it deep, just a deep movie with a deep story, and it had the action for people who were into action movies and that sort of thing, but it was just done in a very stylistic manner that I think was consumable and relatable for folks, in the 90s when it came out. So just a favorite of mine. I could plop down and watch this time and time again. This does not get old for me. And as we'll get into it, oh my gosh, the quotes.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Many from Doc.
Most of them from Doc, really.
Wyatt has a couple, like what you referred to earlier, the skin that smoke wagon, go to work.
Sure. No, it's jerk that pistol and go to work, because it's just skin that smoke wagon. Then he starts smacking them.
Oh, actually, right. Yeah. You're right.
And the best one is like, are you going to do anything? You're just going to stand there and bleed, which was, that one was good.
And then he takes him by the ear and throws him out.
Yeah. Come here, young fella. Oh my gosh.
Oh my.
And then
goodness.
just so calmly turns around. 25% of the house take.
Yeah,
Sounds good.
He takes over the card game. It's his. Boom.
Like he already had it planned out. He saw the whole thing.
Gosh.
So what we're going to do here is we're actually going to use we're going to kind of break this down, but we're going to try and go kind of logically, because as you know, idiots like to have logic. I can't even pronounce idiots. My gosh, this seltzer's getting to me.
Why? Are you an idiot?
Maybe. No, he's an oak. Don't you know? So we're going to break this down.
Corrected.
We're sort of like in judging baseball players. We're gonna see if this is a 5-tool movie. So in baseball, I don't even know what all the 5 tools in baseball are. What is it? Speed, hit for power, hit for average, fielding,
I thought it was
something else.
Hitting, running, stealing, throwing.
Gosh, you're gonna make me look this up, aren't you?
I am.
Baseball 5. I can't type tools. Let's see what that means. Hitting for average, hitting for power, defense, speed, throwing arm.
I was close enough.
And, well, so was I, but we were both wrong. So
if you blend our answers, we're right.
So between 2 idiots to make like one regular person, that's great. However, we're going to look at here is cast and performance as one tool, the script overall is another tool, directing, cinematography and FX, and then soundtrack and sound. Actually, no, wait, I goofed this up. We're going to have quotability, because that is a huge one for us.
Well, I dropped that into script.
Yes. Okay. So let me.
So I think when we do script, that's when we'll kind of run through, the favorites and kind of talk about that.
Okay. Perfect. I just added that in there. See, we have an outline, but it is always subject to change. So let's talk about cast and performance, because you've already started in on that. This cast is rather stacked, but not necessarily in the moment. It wasn't stacked. There are some of these folks who then went on to bigger and better things. There were also, like Sam Elliott, Kurt Russell, Bill Paxton. Well, Bill Paxton, yeah, no, he was a heavy hitter by that point. I mean, he was still kind of in the beginning of his, coming out, as a main man in movies, but yeah, this was post Aliens. Was this before Twister?
What year is this?
93? No,
this was before Twister. Twister was 96.
Because I always think of that as like his real like leading man sort of role.
Yeah,
that was his flick. Well, his flick in was it Helen Hunt?
Yeah, him and Helen Hunt. Yeah.
Yeah, that like they carried the movie. So anyway, but I mean, then you just start getting down, like you were saying, like Powers Booth.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, as Curly Bill Brocious, come on.
Mm-hmm.
Was there anyone more delightful as like a bad guy, but a bad guy who you're almost like, he almost, he's not as devious as you would think,
Mm-hmm.
just kind of almost like I don't know. There's something about him it still made him somewhat endearing. It's like a heel in wrestling that you're like, I know I'm supposed to root against you, but you've got style, you have panache. He was so good. Of course, I mean, Michael Biehn as Johnny Ringo. I mean, what else are you going to ask for? You even got Charlton freaking Heston. You got Moses in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Which, speaking of which, did you hear the MJF thing that he said, I guess the night after on whatever their Monday night show is, AEW's, he talked about, how there was someone else with an M who led his people and all this and went this whole thing. And then he's like, I'm not saying that I'm Moses. That would be ridiculous. I'm better than Moses. I heard about that afterwards. I'm like, wow, that's a bold move right there.
Mm-hmm.
When you go biblical in a promo. I mean, how do you bring that back? We even have Jason Priestley in this thing, for God's sake.
Yep.
Like there was how many movies?
Billy Bob.
Yep. But I just remember, like, so you had some of the 90210 gang was trying desperately to get out of the 90210 shadow. So you had like Jason Priestley in this movie. Then you and remember in The Fifth Element, you had oh my gosh, what was the dude who played Dylan? Can't remember his name.
Luke Perry.
Yeah. And he's like the guy at the beginning of that. And they're trying to kind of get out from under that. And it's just like, nope, sorry. Just go back to the beach.
Whose son,
pit
by
where
the
you
way,
belong.
is a regular on AEW.
Are you serious?
His son is Jungle Boy. I forget his full name, but he goes by Jungle Boy.
Right on. See, it all ties back, folks. It all ties back. It's like 13 degrees of separation, but we managed to make it work. And then, Of course, Thomas Hayden Church, I ain't drinking no more Merlot. That wasn't his line, but still.
Billy Zane.
Yep. And then Dana Delaney playing Josephine Marcus, who, did you know?
Dun-na-na, dun-na-na.
She was in an episode of Battlestar Galactica.
She was, yes.
The episode Sacrifice.
That is correct.
Playing Sasha Abenel. Whoever
That's
that
right.
might have been.
That's right. And if I may jump in,
yes,
Paula Malcolmson, who plays Allie Earp, she ended up playing the wife of the creator of the Cylons in that short-lived show Caprica.
Well, we're just, you can't all be hits.
I'm just saying, there's the BSG connection.
That's like Son of BSG. It's like one of those bad kung fu movies where like you have a sequel but none of the original cast.
No
okay, call it
Son
of Battlestar Galactica.
Respect.
Perfect. Then of course, what was it? What was the guy's name? I've got it right. Stephen Lang, who reportedly was drunk through most of filming.
Well, hey, you gotta do the research.
It's method acting.
Exactly.
But I couldn't believe that like Stephen Lang was Ike Clanton, the cowardly Ike Clanton, and he was also that badass colonel in Avatar. Like I never connected those dots.
Yeah,
that blows me away. Okay, that now
was
I
the
have
beginning
respect
for
for
him.
acting.
Yeah. I think he was one of those guys that was kind of, on the uptick, as far as his career, not established yet, but man, if he is not, I have this in our notes here, but if he is not the best heel in a movie, I don't know who comes close, because it isn't so much that he's like a dominant bad guy, but it's like, I'm going to puff my chest out and I'm going to be, Mr. Big, like for about 5 minutes until I turn around and, Sam Elliott cracks me over the head with a rifle.
No, he is by far one of the best cowardly heels in a movie ever.
Thank you.
Yes, like the one that talks tough and then begs off at the first sign of trouble. Like
yes.
At the OK Corral, don't shoot me, I'm not armed. And then of course he goes and grabs a gun and starts trying to take him out, shoot him in the back.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, yep. Ike was just a piece of freaking work.
Yep.
The one that that I think is very interesting is that we actually almost didn't get Val Kilmer as Doc Holliday.
Really?
Did you know Willem Dafoe was the original choice to play Doc Holliday?
What?
Which would have been a totally different movie. I mean, I'm not saying Willem Dafoe couldn't have pulled it off, couldn't have been a Doc Holliday, but nothing close to this. The whole reason he didn't get it, I guess, is because who was it that produced this movie? I think this was produced somewhere along the lines through whatever it was. Willem Dafoe had just done not the Passion of the Christ. That would have been all right. It was the Last Temptation of Christ.
Yeah.
And at that point, the studio was like, no way. He ain't going to be in our flick. And so we get Val Kilmer, and thank God for that. So that was interesting. But yeah, and of course, Val Kilmer, outstanding. Kurt Russell is really good in this, with the exception of one or two moments, which actually I kind of, we'll separate that out. Overall, his performance is very good. So I'll just say that, and I'll save the rest for the directing category. But I'm prepared. I'm prepared to, just on the basis of like the top line cast, just to give this a 5. This is and we're voting on these. Each category is scored 0 to 5, worst to best. And arbitrarily, I've just basically said anything over 18 qualifies as a 5-tool flick. I'm giving this a 5. Like, it is an outstanding cast.
Yeah.
What do you say, sir?
No, I'm with you. I'm going to 5 as well. I already talked about the star power. I just want to take a minute to just, as you talked about Val Kilmer as Doc Holliday, and, just the way he plays, this tortured soul of Doc, and yet, as you also said, it plays the angel and the devil on the shoulder of Wyatt, and how their relationship over the course of the movie is kind of this constant where you have Wyatt, doing and kind of getting himself into situations, and Doc being that constant for him. And then, at the very end, that great scene, and, as Doc is on his deathbed, where, he just tells him, go, live life to the hilt, like just live, go out there, kind of his last, bit of support and stability for his friend, just telling him, just go out there and be you and live your life. Don't live your life for, according to another sort of set of rules, but live life as you need to. And much the way he did, and not, I don't think Wyatt Earp went and lived the sort of hedonistic lifestyle that Doc did, but it was that idea of, not holding back, and him wanting his friend to really embrace his freedom and to go and be happy and that sort of thing. And so I just really appreciated that throughout the whole movie. I mean, especially, you talk about performances, that like I really enjoy the scene when, they're about to do the face off or the standoff at the OK Corral, and Wyatt says to Doc, you don't have to get involved in this, because he sees the writing on the wall, and just the way Kilmer plays it, where like that, like Doc Holliday looks legitimately hurt.
Oh,
insulted.
Yeah.
Like any other time in the movie, he is stone cold. This one, you look at him, he looks like a skull, a wounded puppy. It's like, that's a hell of a thing for you to say to me.
Yeah. And I agree. Like, that is like the relationship. Kurt Russell and Val Kilmer do such a great job of like portraying a somewhat complicated friendship.
Yeah.
Because you have to remember, like, Doc is not working on the right side of the law most of the time. Right. And Wyatt was the law,
Yeah.
And oh my gosh. And of course that intro scene for Doc was just, again, it just gives you everything you need to know about him.
Yeah.
And Val Kilmer just chewing that scene up. Oh my gosh, so good. But
Johnny Tyler.
You madcap. Where you going with that shotgun?
Oh my gosh.
There should have been just an award for that accent. Right there is just utterly chef's kiss.
You may go.
What
now.
do you give it? Oh my gosh, that's so good too. Like just the fact that they're just so dismissive. Like at that point, like the only thing they could have done to like essentially make themselves like to be any more like kind of dominant in that scene is like they would have all just had to basically just pee on Johnny Tyler. Like that's the only way they could have asserted any more dominance over him. Like Wyatt just smacked the living crap out of him and tossed him out by his ear. He shows up with a shotgun. Even when he shows up, no one is concerned.
Yeah.
Like none of the Earp brothers even really give him that much. They all just kind of look at him, but no one reaches for a gun, nothing. And then they have this whole conversation as he's just standing there with the shotgun.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then Doc's like, "Oh, you may go now." And the wife's like, "Leave the shotgun." And then he won't even take it out of his hand. Like he makes him just set it down on the ground. And then Johnny Tyler thanks him as he's walking away. Oh my gosh. It was just like, it told you kind of like those couple scenes just kind of told you everything you need to know about those characters, which I want to talk a little bit more about that in the script, but oh my gosh, so good. But anyways, what's your score on this? Because otherwise we are just going to reenact this like moment by moment for the rest of the show.
Real quick, last point is on Johnny Ringo.
Oh, jeez, here we go.
Just Michael Biehn. Fantastic job playing the heel to Holliday's face, and
he is the real villain of the movie. Really,
absolutely, and plays it very, very well. And yeah, so just, we beat it to death, top to bottom. Fantastic cast. The performances all, just excellent. Going with a 5 on this one because it's just top notch. It's just top notch. Can't say anything more.
Agreed. And this might have been like the perfect role for Michael Biehn because he gets to play a bad guy, but he's also a bad guy that you're like, there's layers to him. Like there is a tragedy to that character. And you do get it a little bit when they and let's get into kind of the script now, but like when that back and forth between him and Doc, and it's very true. Like that whole, like, I recognize something around the eyes. It reminds me of me.
Yeah.
No, now I'm sure I hate him, and there is a bit of that. Like, there are levels to that character of Johnny Ringo, and you kind of get enough of that. You don't need to know, like, you don't need a 20-minute backstory on him, but you just get it. And that's through very economical storytelling and also great performance by Michael Biehn. I'm not taking anything away from him, but there's also the way they kind of just, even in the beginning of, when the Cowboys ride into town and they take out the wedding party, and, of course, Johnny Ringo translates what the priest was actually saying and recognizes that it was from Revelations. And then, of course, then he shoots him and is just very calm. Like, this guy is a man who essentially has almost no fear.
Yeah.
And then even when they're doing the play and talking about Faust and saying, what would you do? He's like, I already did it. Like, essentially, like, I already sold my soul to the devil.
Yeah.
And again, like, just adding more layers. And oh my gosh, the script does this so well. Like I was watching it today, and within 25 minutes you have all the pieces on the chessboard.
Yeah.
And in a 2-hour movie, within the first quarter of the movie, everything is now set up. You've met all of the main characters, and kind of who they all are. Like you really have a good capsule thumbnail sketch of everyone.
Yeah.
So you got a good view of everything. They've introduced the town. They've introduced kind of this power vacuum. They've introduced, the love interest for Wyatt Earp. They've introduced the bad guys. They've introduced everybody there. And you kind of now are like, okay, now what? And then you get to build this terrific kind of build up to the OK Corral, which would be kind of the end of the movie for a lot of people. But then it's like, no, that's like the middle of the movie. Now it's the beginning of this other thing.
Yeah.
And it just takes you on this ride it's not the conventional way that I think a lot of people would have told that story. And I think that's a great job by the writer. Yeah. And just is economic in the way that it does things, and in portraying Wyatt as who he is, because Wyatt is kind of, in a way, the reluctant hero, which kind of plays off of a lot of his own, his own reputation, which he distributed because everyone else was dead, so he can say whatever the hell he wants. this. And then it turns out he kind of was closer to some of the things that have been said about him. But, you know, it's very weird because Wyatt is an interesting character because he doesn't know. He is just sort of wandering through this thing. Like when his brother asks him, "Hey, do you believe in God?" "Yeah." "No." "I don't know." "Well, what do you think happens to you when you die?" "I don't know." Yeah. And then when Josephine is asking him about what he wants to do, and he just kind of he's flustered because he doesn't want to face these questions and all this. Like he is not for all of like his directness, he really doesn't necessarily know his own mind. Yeah. He's a very strange main character, like a main hero character.
And
I really appreciate it. Yeah. And it doesn't seem like he necessarily does. In some ways, he very much does. It seems like in many ways, he almost knows other people better than he knows himself. Like he can size up Johnny Tyler in a heartbeat and know exactly what he's dealing with.
Yeah.
You know, but himself, not so much. Yeah.
Well, and when you talk about the economics of how they do it, or the efficiency and how they tell this stuff. So this quote, this is Doc Holliday when Wyatt's asking him, like, what makes a man like, Ringo, do the things he does. And he says, a man like Ringo has got a great big hole right in the middle of him. He can't never kill enough or steal enough or inflict enough pain to ever fill it. And Earp says, well, what does he need? And Holliday says, revenge. And Earp says, for what? And then Holliday just coolly says, being born.
Yeah.
And
no,
what that's
writing.
Also kind of a sad thing too, because like you said, I think Holliday knows Ringo so well because that's Holliday.
Well, I think it's Holliday honestly, I think Doc Holliday is trying to commit suicide. Mm-hmm. Like he knows, I mean, at that point, he's a lunger, he's got tuberculosis. It was tuberculosis, right?
Yeah.
So he has this disease that is going to kill him. And there's no cure for it. Like he goes out west because supposedly, dry air is going to help him, but he's not getting any better. And he's essentially just going to, okay, now I'm just going to be a gambler and I'm going to drink and I'm going to smoke and I'm probably going to get shot. And at the end of the day, it's like that's not what gets him. Like despite his best efforts, he lives, it's like against the odds. So, I mean, it's almost like it's the kind of the lighter and darker version of those stories. But yeah, they're both like these characters who are doomed. They're both doomed characters, and they both have different ways of working through that. Whereas Doc is like, I'm going to be a kind of a hedonist and have fun. And yeah, I'll steal the money when I'm heading out of the casino. But, he tried to shoot me. So I feel kind of justified. I'm not going to kill him. I'll just stab him, Whereas, Johnny Ringo's like, I'll just shoot them all. I don't care. I'm going to hell anyways. So yeah, let me shoot the priest. Let me do this. Let me do that. That's how I look at it.
All right. Let's see. So what else around script and quotability? I mean, we could go on for days about the quotes. When Wyatt starts his reckoning and he basically blindsides Ike at the train station, you called down the thunder. Well, now you've got it. And just that whole speech about, you tell him I'm coming and hell's coming with me. You hear, hell's coming with me. I mean, like on its own, if someone just kind of read you that, like I just did, and just did it in their own way, it just sounds probably kind of cheesy. But when you see it in the movie, it is a great scene. It's just like, good Lord, here we go.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
What? Come on.
We can talk a little bit about that. I think those are some of the weaker things, and I think they were trying to make them legit, but there's some things that's just like, no, that's just verging into some cheese. Like, yes, some of it, yes. There are a couple of moments where I'm like, okay, we went really over the top there, and it felt out of place in the movie.
I'm surprised by that. Wow.
I mean, I get it. Like you call down the thunder and hell's coming with me. Like I get, okay, those moments. No, those are not ones that I'll point out, but there's a couple of others that I would.
Sure. And I have a couple nits as well. I mean, to me, and sorry to do this, but it's me. So I'll translate it into wrestling. I think the reason why like scenes like the way the movie plays resonates with me so much is it is kind of the classic, wrestling story, right? The babyface gets their tail kicked. Mm-hmm. They get poked, they get prodded. Finally, they lash back and fight a little bit and get a victory. and then they suffer a pretty significant loss, and now it's like, now is the big baby face comeback, where Wyatt goes on that rampage, and it's not just I'm looking to just show you guys who's the law. I'm going to wipe you all out. You're done. And the way they do it is just, I feel like they get the emotion of it right. You know what I mean? Like they get you to a place where you don't see Morgan's death coming. You think it's going to be more his, like the Sam Elliott character based on what happens and stuff. And so when Morgan dies, and you got Wyatt kind of leaving town, there's a part of you that's like, okay, there's a lot of time left for this movie to run, so something's got to happen, but you're not really sure what it's going to be. And when it turns into a full blown, like he's finally embracing being a lawman again, to go out and kind of reconcile what this group has done and the lives that this group has destroyed, it just kind of has that emotional payoff. And so I feel like, while it may be over the top or feel cheesy, it's just kind of, it plays to the emotion of the story. This is him. Totally. This is him becoming Wyatt Earp. Like you said, he was kind of like this sort of peaceful shell of himself who's trying to like forge a life, kind of like Michael Corleone, right? He's trying to he's trying to find,
he's trying to go legit.
He's trying to go legit in a way that doesn't play to, his more violent tendencies and the skills that he has. And, they leave him no other choice but to go to the dark place to deal with them. And he takes Doc with him. And that's why when I said about the Doc quote, I mean, I agree with what you're saying, but I have always viewed Doc as, similar to Johnny Ringo. Like if put in the right position, he is a cold-blooded killer. He will take someone out, as we see him do to Johnny Ringo himself.
Oh no, totally. Doc is not above killing somebody. What I just mean is I think it comes from a somewhat, even though it's coming from a similar doomed place.
Yeah.
They approach it in a different way, and that approach does make a difference.
Yeah. Yes. He's not totally to the dark side, but I feel like he understands enough of the dark side to recognize it in Johnny. Like he sees himself in John, some parts of himself in Johnny, probably the not so great parts.
Yep. No, I agree. And I mean, in quotes, we could go on and on forever. A couple of my favorites. It's true, you are a good woman. Then again, you may be the Antichrist. Which I was just like, oh my gosh, what a relationship this is. What a relationship this is, But it totally fits that relationship. Like she is using him, he's using her, and it's just like, okay, this is just another part of my doomed story, isn't it? Okay. And then when the poker game at the beginning, when they introduced Doc, he's like, are we cross? If we weren't friends, I don't think I could bear it. And just, oh my goodness. That's so it just kind of demonstrating what a cool customer Doc really is.
Yeah.
Like this is a guy who is not going to you're not going to wind him up. You're not going to fluster him because essentially he's like, I'm already dead. What are you going to do to me? You're going to kill me sooner. I'm probably going to die in the next couple of years anyways.
Yeah.
So you're not, there's no way you can frighten me because I know death is coming for me. I'm just not exactly sure when, but it's coming a lot quicker than it is for everyone else.
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
Yeah.
And what was it? Just going through some of these, oh my gosh, is so good. Like, of course, there's, where's Wyatt? He's down by the creek walking on water. I mean, but then also in that same thing, like, why are you here, Doc? Because Wyatt Earp is my friend. I got lots of friends. Like, I don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it just kind of, it is this sad commentary. Like, oh my gosh, this is a very lonely individual,
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man, so good.
Yeah. We talked about it before, but the scene in the bar when Wyatt starts slapping around Johnny Tyler and he says, go ahead and skin that smoke wagon and see what happens.
Yes.
And he's like, I'm getting awful tired of you. And he's like, I'm getting tired of your gas. Now jerk that pistol and go to work.
Yeah.
I mean, I really feel like they tried to go for some of the, I don't know if this is truly language from the West, but it feels like it could be, you know what I mean?
Oh, totally. Yeah.
And especially like Ike when the when they're in the bar after the performance, and it's kind of the first meeting of Ringo and Holliday, and Ike Clanton does his deal where he's like, listen, Mr. Kansas law dog, law don't go around here anymore, savvy. It just feels like a foreign language, in a way. Like I know what he's saying, but it's just stated in such a weird, indirect way.
Yeah, even if it's not legit, like era speech, it's one of those things where it feels true enough.
It feels right.
Like
right.
you see it in, some historian, but well, actually they didn't use that word back. And it was like, you know what? It feels real enough and it works for the story. It's a movie. It's all, to some degree or another, this is all kind of made up. So just relax. I love the you die first, get it? Your friends might get me in a rush, but not before I make your head into a canoe. You understand? That is great. Another great Ike Clanton moment where, he's basically peeing himself right there in the middle of the street. I don't think I'll let you arrest us today, Behan.
That's such a great line. When he comes out and he acts like he's like, all right, you're all under arrest. And Earp's like, yeah, you're on my playground, mister.
Yeah. Or the fact that after Doc shoots Johnny Ringo and Wyatt sees the star and he's like, my hypocrisy only goes so far. This is great. Oh my gosh.
They even gave a great quote to the old marshal, Fred White. Come on, boys. We don't want any trouble in here. Not in any language.
Yes, which is great. The whole Latin exchange.
Basically his way of saying, I don't know what the heck you two just said, but it ain't good and I don't want any problems.
Exactly. It's like a parent, honestly, because there's sometimes, like, as a parent, you didn't necessarily hear all of it, but you heard enough and you heard the tone and you're like, you know what? I don't like that. I don't even know what you said, but that ain't working.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. But so good.
Any other good ones we left out here? Let's see.
They're all good. Oh my gosh.
You're no Daisy. You're no Daisy at all.
Oh my. I guess the strain must have just been too much to bear. Oh my goodness.
Oh my gosh. What else? Let me see. We'll wrap this up in a minute. Let's see. Oh, you're a Daisy if you do.
Or even better, like when he comes out, it's a drunk piano player. Can't even shoot straight. I'm this, probably seeing double. And takes out the other pistol. Oh, I got 2 guns, one for each of you. Oh my gosh. Or better yet, maybe poker's just not your game, Ike. I know. Let's have a spelling contest.
That is fantastic.
That was lovely.
Oh, and the scene where afterwards, when Ike is drunk, which he is most of the movie, and he grabs his guns from the bartender, and he's talking a bunch of crap about the Earps. He's like, next time I see the Earps, I'm gonna shoot him. And he's just like walking backwards, and you just see like Sam Elliott all of a sudden appear, and he just takes the butt of his pistol and cracks him over the head. It's just such a great scene. Just once again, Ike Blanton, cowardly heel of all time. Good Lord, just phenomenal.
Yeah, and then of course the last one on the IMDb page, which is as good a place as any to end. Oh my God! Just when Wyatt Earp sees Doc wink at the
right
Cowboys, he starts reaching for his pistol, like, oh, I really didn't want it to go this way. Oh man, that was great.
Oh, and one last one with Holliday and Kate. Kate, you're not wearing a bustle.
Oh, how lewd. And then when they're heading out, now I know why you weren't wearing your bustle. Oh my gosh, so good. Oh. Or even cover your ears, darling.
That's right.
All right. So before we reenact the entire movie, like I said, I'm giving this a 5 out of 5. This is no question. What are you laying down here?
Same.
All right.
Same.
All right. So now we get into our third tool, directing. Now this is where things are interesting, because Tombstone is an interesting flick when it comes to directing, because the original director was the screenwriter, which was Kevin Jarre or Jari. I don't know how to pronounce the name. Kevin Jarre. That's what I'm going to call him. However, he was replaced in early on in filming with George P. Cosmatos. Am I pronouncing that right?
I think so.
I'm asking you because it sounds like a Greek name.
Yeah, sounds good.
Oh, well, thanks. That's a ringing endorsement, which was interesting because he was recommended by Sylvester Stallone because he had directed Stallone in Cobra. So there is a direct line that you can make between Cobra and Tombstone.
Well,
and when you think about it, it kind of makes sense. However, basically, this was ghost directed by Kurt Russell because it was not when the new director was brought in, there was not much time for him to get ramped up on stuff. So essentially, he was there he was directing, but Kurt Russell was knee deep in this project and actually was, by most accounts, was the actual director, but did not want to be listed as the director. So there's kind of a little bit of interesting tidbits there, which the two bits of direction I have, I don't have a problem with most of the direction of this movie. I think considering the what was going on behind the scenes, came out really well. The two parts I have trouble with is first of all the after Virgil is dead scene, and Morgan, I'm sorry, yeah, Virgil makes it after Morgan's dead and he's going outside in the rain, and we have that scene in the street with Maddie and then Josephine,
yes,
and Wyatt Earp, and kind of like, you know, the sort of scene, you know, why God, why, pulling up to the sky and all that, and that felt a bit much. That really just kind of takes me out of that every time. And I know it's supposed to be like pulling on my heartstrings, but I'm like, it's like you pull them so tight that they snapped out of your hands. Like, it's just a bridge too far. And then the other moment, which I hate to do it because I laugh every time, but I still have to point this out. The famous shootout at the crick, where Wyatt, you know, no, and then like that long drawn out no over the slow-mo.
McDermott to do his Palpatine for that one.
Oh my gosh. I laugh at it every time, and I'm not supposed to laugh. I know this, but I just feel like those two moments are the ones that I'm like, it's not great in those. Otherwise, I think it's done really well. Yeah. And we can probably talk a little bit about the editing too, because I think that would kind of fall into some of this, because it is a story choice, even though it might have been somewhat of an editing choice, because you had an edit issue in terms of a nit to pick with the night of the Earp's downfall.
Yeah.
Which I would agree with. It is a very weird editing job, and in fact, the part of the reason for that is that those events took place months apart,
right?
In reality, but. Yeah, that to me, it's awkward there, but otherwise I ain't got nothing really bad to say about it. I feel like all the performances, which are part of, you know, also part of the director, and the director's setting the table for the actors and all that, and giving direction, like I feel like all those are good. So I'm gonna give this, I'm gonna give it a 4. I gotta ding it a little bit for those. But I mean, it would be a 4.5 if we wanted to go into decimals, but I'm going to give it a 4. What would you say?
Well, if you don't mind, after hearing you kind of talk, I think I'm going to fold in my nits into this one, because I think that's where most of them are, is really around this area. So, you know, my first nit is really around from it, and maybe this is more of a story issue than a directing issue, but I really felt like the part of the story around Wyatt and his wife, and, you know, to some extent, you know, the Josephine triangle was really just not well done and not really well explained. I mean, his wife, of course, they portray her as being, you know, an addict of sorts. I don't know that, you know, as I've watched the movie over and over again, I don't know that Wyatt comes off real well. You know what I mean? Like. No. And I don't know if they were just trying to use the addict piece of it to make Maddie look like she's flawed and, you know, not worthy of him or whatever, but he really doesn't come off as a great husband. You know, she has her issues. And once the Earps leave Tombstone after Morgan's death, we don't see her and hear from her anymore. And it's only through the narration at the end that we come to find out that she dies. So it's almost like she died shortly after they left Tombstone. So, it's like, and so Wyatt's free to have his happy ending, you know, and it was just such a weird thrown together way of doing that. You know, I know you can't do exposition on everything. And, you know, the focus was really on the battle between the Earps and the Cowboys, but I don't know. At times, you know, from a directing standpoint, I would have assumed trying to strike some sort of balance between the relationships of the Earps with their wives and I kind of caught throughout. I mean, as they're riding into town, like Morgan's like, you know, just like getting all hot and bothered about the ladies he sees walking around. I'm like, your wife's sitting right next to you, dude. It's like,
oh yeah, like literally right behind you. Like she can hear you.
Right.
But
and,
I mean, I guess I think,
and I don't know if it was just the times, you know, that they were trying to portray and whatever, you know, because of what it was.
Yeah.
But from a directing standpoint, I just felt like the continuity of Wyatt and his, you know, with Josephine being kind of like the better match for him, and, you know, Maddie being kind of the bad wife or the bad partner. It just felt too weird the way they did it. And I kind of put that at the feet of the director. I don't think that was guided the right way and told the right way.
Yeah, it's like in Rounders. Like you have to have, like, Maddie is portrayed as such the wet blanket. She is she's Matt Damon's girlfriend in Rounders, where unfortunately you're in such a rush to focus on everything else and to really kind of hit all your beats and to flesh out all these areas that essentially, like, that character's only purpose is to be like this kind of stumbling block or an obstacle to be overcome or something. And in this case, you know, in Matt Damon's case, like, oh, well, she's the thing that's keeping him from going and fulfilling his, you know, destiny as a great poker player. And you don't give them any redeeming qualities. Like there's you don't understand why they're together in the first place. And that's the problem, because with Maddie, you just don't understand, like, why in the hell is Wyatt with her? Like, even if they made some sort of, I mean, even if they made a stupid joke or some scene about, oh, okay, she's fantastic in bed or something. Like, I mean, I'm going right off the top of my head and coming up with like the laziest thing that you could possibly throw in there. At least that would be an explanation, because in the movie there's none.
Right.
There's no explanation of why in the hell would he be with her.
Yeah.
She is just a total wet blanket. She is never any fun. She is never any kind of mental stimulation, never any kind of emotional stimulation. There's like nothing.
Yeah.
And it's like, why in the world would these two, because she doesn't even seem like she wants to be with them. I'm like, why would these two people be together?
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Yeah.
So I totally agree with you there. Like that should have been fleshed out. Either that or it should have been downplayed. Like the love triangle didn't necessarily need to be as out and out as it was. Like Maddie showing up to the OK Corral and there's Josephine. And then at the, you know, after Morgan dies, then they are there again. Like, don't have those scenes. And okay, then it's not as big of a deal. Then it's just like, yeah, well, these two star-crossed people are kind of dancing in and out of each other's lives, and then finally they get together. No, you're totally right on that. I was until you brought it up, I really wasn't able to put that together.
Yeah, and the ending too is just kind of weird, where it's like, you know, he goes to her and he's like, I have no money, I have this, and she's like, that's okay, I'm loaded. I'm like, really? It's like, well, that's just, I mean, if that's what history was, then fine, but I'm just like, it seems awfully convenient, you know, his addict wife dies and now he's got the gal who comes from money, and it's like, oh my God. Yeah,
it is a little too cute. You know what I mean? It is. Yeah. I totally get it.
The other directing nit, and this one is a bit more egregious, is when Virgil gets shot, and you know, Wyatt and Morgan are at his home, you know, as he's basically learning he's going to have his you know, his arm going to have to be amputated.
Well, it wasn't amputated. It's just the nerves are shot, so it's going to be useless.
Oh, okay. I thought it was amputated for some reason, but
no.
Yeah. So the nerves are shot, and I love that scene because like it's kind of like, it really does play like a classic Western. Like his wife is there sobbing at his side, and he's like, "It's okay, Allie. I'll hug you with the one arm I do have."
Yeah. Yeah. That
so
was one of those
funny.
moments. It was a little bit it was so cheesy that I was like, all right, fine. It's Sam Elliott, man. I mean, how am I going to get angry at Sam Elliott and his mustache? He was the one guy in the entire movie where they're like, okay, y'all got to grow out these mustaches. And Sam Elliott was like,
Sam's
well,
like,
I think
done.
I'm all set. Oh, okay. Even if Sam Elliott had shaved his mustache, he probably could have sprouted it by the afternoon. Been like, well, I'll just give me a couple hours. You know, like it just, oh, how'd you do that? The power of my mind.
That's right. But, and I believe I'm remembering this right. In that scene, though, Morgan is upset by everything going on and kind of throws his hat and his jacket and his gun on and just storms out.
Yes, and went to play pool immediately.
The next scene is he's just relaxing playing pool at the bar. And I'm like, well, that seems kind of a strange way to storm out of your brother's place to go wreak vengeance upon the people who shot him. And of course,
I'm so angry at this. I must go play billiards.
That's right. I'm going to take my anger out on the pool balls just because that's what I do. And then, of course, Morgan gets shot and then that's and it's really interesting. It's really around that whole sequence of scenes where I see a lot of the missteps, like, and you correctly brought up as well, when Wyatt goes stumbling out the door and he holds up his bloody hands to his wife and he's just kind of like aimlessly walking around, and you have Josephine running up and he tells her to go away, leave me alone. And then his wife comes up and she just turns around and walks away. And I'm just like, what the heck is going on?
And actually, I even forgot the third thing of when the Earths are heading out of town. That's the moment when Josephine picks to like go strutting across the street.
Yes. It was so weird.
So ham-fisted. It is. Yeah. Which, I mean, some of that might come back in the script. I don't know. I probably should have read the screenplay just as for fulfilling, research here. But you know what? Screw it. We're just going to lay it all at Kurt Russell's feet because that's just the way it goes. Sorry, Kurt.
So for my score, I've been struggling with this because I'll ruin some of the suspense and just say I'm really struggling between a 3 and a 4.
Oh, wow.
And the reason being for all of the rest of how great the movie is, which it is, I think a lot of it falls on the cast and the performance. A lot of it falls on the script and some of the two other categories we're going to talk about. But I really feel like if there is a Achilles heel to this movie, it is in some ways the directing, because at this crucial point in the movie when you're kind of building up to this dramatic, this dramatic fulcrum that's now going to kind of tip the scales in a different direction from where we've been. It just felt really thrown together and not very well done, and that's like kind of the part you want to really sing, and be really strong. So I'm going to split the difference and go 3-5 on this one, my friend, because I got to give it, it's a great movie, but I got to give it its due when it comes to, I got to knock it down a peg because of some oversights by the Tony Khan of this film. So.
All right. Well, next we move on to cinematography and effects, which, I mean, there's definitely some special effects in this, some gags and stuff like that. But overall, to me, cinematography in this movie is gorgeous. Like everything just looks really good.
Feels like a Western.
Yeah. Everything feels like it's lit pretty like legitimately, like with, I mean, obviously not like total natural light and all that, but I mean, it feels like you don't feel like you're taken out. Like I was watching, what was I watching the other night? Some movie, and it's kind of in a dark area, but then of course everything is somewhat well lit. I'm like, that's just not how that works. Here it feels like they managed to walk that line of like, okay, it's as movie realistic as you're going to get. It's not ultra realistic, but it's for movie standards, it's really realistic. When they're kind of pulling into town, just the showing the expanse of the going across sunrises and all of it is, even just the opening sequence of like the cowboys riding into town. That little Mexican town looked amazing, and the fact that when they pull into Tombstone itself and they pull onto that main street, like it looks like a full town. Like it's bustling and all that. Like you get all of that. You get a real sense of the geography of the town right away. And everything just, it just all looks great. I can't find a part of this movie that to me was just like, that just didn't quite do it. No, it was all it looked fantastic to me.
Yep. Yeah.
How about for you, sir? What were you thinking?
You know, I agree with everything you said. I think one of the things that really makes this movie stand out to others that you know that I see is I've rarely come across, and you know, again, it could just be the thematics and the style of the movies that I watch, but this one has a lot of like close-ups, you know, to the eyes, to the face, the stares, you know, like I even noticed like with the Johnny Ringo Doc Holliday face off, you know, it goes from both of their eyes, you know, and I love it when it kind of pans down from Holliday's eyes to just his mouth, and he's like, "Say when," you know, like it's just it's like so focused on the tenseness of the scene. You know, the OK Corral being the same way. Like one of the guys, I don't know the character's name in the OK Corral scene, but when they're doing, you know, that kind of stare off before Wyatt says, "Oh my God," you know, or "Oh dear God," whatever it is he says. There's this one guy, he just has this really like weird look on his face, but when you think about being in a standoff like that, it's like the slightest movement is going to cause this whole thing to go off. You know what I mean? So it really is done well. And you see the fear and the tenseness and the stress of the moment in everyone's face, you know? And so I think they did a really good job that way of trying to communicate, you know, the pressure and tenseness of these moments in the characters' faces and really, bring that out well. So I think overall, you know, it's like you said, beautiful scenery, you know, great shots of the towns, of all these settings that they're in. I mean, it's just like, it really transports you back to probably a more idealistic view of what, you know, the West might have been, but at least, you know, visually it's just stunning. It immerses you into that kind of universe of it all. And really just does a fantastic job of communicating the emotion prior to all of the shooting and action that happens. You know, I think it really excels there.
Yeah. I'm giving it a 5. What are you giving it?
5-a-roo, my friend.
All right. We are hurtling towards this being a legit 5-tool movie. Last category, because I think this, not necessarily in this movie, but I think in a lot of movies, like the sound and soundtrack can have a huge influence on the movie. Although I think this one does a very good job. There's some really nice themes in the soundtrack. There's times when, you know, the soundtrack just kind of goes away, and that works so well to kind of just create space and its own kind of tension, like that silence. The one nit I will pick here is in terms of like the sound mix. It felt like I really needed to have this kind of cranked up in order to hear some dialogue, as well as, you know, to hear dialogue and the real kind of background sounds. And then of course, when action happens, everything amps up and it gets real loud. That'd be the only nit that I have to pick with this. Otherwise, I think the soundtrack was beautiful. Sound design was great. Nothing stuck out to me where I'm like, oh, that's terrible. So I'm going 4.5 on this one, just dinging it a little bit for that sound mix issue.
Yeah, you put the 4 or 5 in my slot, mister.
I know. I'm trying to multitask here and failing miserably.
Uncle Todd's filling in the table.
What do you say?
Yeah, I mean, you know, for me, I really have no qualms with, you know, the soundtrack. I'm usually listening to this on my headphones, you know, Bluetooth connected to my laptop. So my, you know, whatever deficiency there is in the soundtrack is, I don't know if it's just like corrected or negated because of the Bose phones I'm wearing. But yeah, no, I feel like, you know, the music provides another texture to the film that gives it that Western feel, that old kind of feel to it. Fits very nicely into, you know, the various scenes. And like you said, I mean, so, you know, less is more sometimes, and, you know, cutting it away ends up being a great effect in and of itself. And so, yeah, I would go with I'll actually go with a 5 on this one. I really have no qualms with it. I think it fits very well. It doesn't take away from the film. And I feel it, you know, just it's another reason why this in my mind is just such a classic film that is to be enjoyed and watched multiple times over.
Well, for those of you keeping score at home, we have dueling scores here, ties, as a matter of fact, 23.5 for both of us, certifying this as a 5-tool flick. So yes, a free-range idiocy 5-tool flick. is you can
Who gets the bottle of bourbon?
we'll be mailing glorious certificates out to the cast to certify this. I'm sure they'll be looking forward to them. I'll be sure to tear off like the little dot matrix tracks off the side before I frame them.
And
well, that's good.
Thank you.
And now we have finally accomplished our goal of talking about Tombstone, which is again at least a year in the planning. Doesn't it feel
reached?
Yes. You're a daisy if you do.
And another thing.
All right. Well, what do you got for and another thing for this episode, sir?
Well, as typical, I don't have one but two recommendations, but I'll make them quick. Both of them are actually byproducts of the recent family trip to Washington, D.C. On our way out, my wife played the audiobook by Anderson Cooper and Katherine Howe, Vanderbilt, The Rise and Fall of an American Dynasty. And this is, for those who don't know, Anderson Cooper comes from... his mother comes from the Vanderbilt line. And this is all about, it's really interesting. He starts off the book basically, writing about how he really doesn't, think about too much the fact that he's a Vanderbilt. He more identifies that he's from, his father's family than he is a Vanderbilt, and really kind of talking about how he wanted to do a book where, he started to come to a point of appreciating his background without feeling, kind of saddled or anchored by it, and trying to understand a bit more about, the family and really what led to, probably what he calls probably one of the biggest, losses of wealth by any family, in American history, because of how rich and wealthy they became. It was very interesting to me because I was never really plugged into what's called the Gilded Age, which is kind of the late 1800s, this kind of boom period where there was a lot of growth as, some base infrastructure industries were being kind of taken over by these big families like the Vanderbilts, and just the amount of waste and excess that went into their lifestyles, just building these massive, homes that just as time went on, it became very clear could not be maintained because it's too expensive to maintain them. It was great they built them, but no one has that kind of money laying around, for all perpetuity. So eventually, something has to go. And so, like mixed into it are these stories of, the rise of the family, but also, some of the, tales of what they had to go through, in terms of coming down from being, being one of the wealthiest and some of the tragedies that they suffered. And so it was really interesting to listen to. It was a great book to listen to on such a long car ride. It really, you kind of get immersed in it, and just Anderson Cooper doing the narration and reading the book. He's just a very, very good voice to listen to for a long period of time. And I just really enjoyed it. It was, it wasn't a subject on paper I would have thought I would have been interested in. And it was very interesting to kind of learn about, just that family and just their kind of story going through the late 1800s and through to present day. On the flip side, on the ride home, was a completely different book, A Very Punchable Face, a memoir by Colin Jost, which I love the title. Colin Jost is really funny. He's on SNL. He is one of the head writers and is one of the talking heads on their news segment that they do, Weekend Update. And so just a really interesting story. Again, I'm fascinated by people's life stories. He shares how he really didn't communicate very much until the age of 4. He did not talk. He didn't learn how to talk really. He had, somewhat of a, like I wouldn't call it a learning disability, but, something he had to overcome. And it just took him a while to kind of get into a place where, he dealt with confidence issues and finding kind of his place and how he came to be, getting into writing and the love of writing. And so it was really fascinating. And then he gets into a lot of stories about his time on SNL and kind of veers off toward, the middle and end in some weird directions, which, really didn't kind of connect with me. But overall, I thought it was a really good story. So if you are looking for a book or audiobook idea, I would definitely recommend recommend Vanderbilt, The Rise and Fall of an American Dynasty by Anderson Cooper and Katherine Howe, and A Very Punchable Face, a memoir by Colin Jost.
Well, how very bougie of you to be dealing with this highbrow learning and entertainment. I just went with a movie.
Hey, sometimes you bring the art and class and culture, and I bring the TV shows, and now it's the flip side. So there we go.
Okay, well, very good. It's my turn. However, it's kind of interesting that we all have memoirs or documentaries of one shape or form or another here. My and another thing is it's available on Netflix right now. It's Ronnie Coleman, The King. And I really didn't know who Ronnie Coleman was at all. This had come up a couple times when I was just kind of going through Netflix and looking for stuff. And this kept on getting suggested to me, which I don't know why, because I'm not into bodybuilding. You know what I mean? So basically the description is, today legendary bodybuilder Ronnie Coleman's body bears the scars of becoming the best in the world. Here he shares what it took to reach his goals. So I ended up watching this Saturday night after my powerlifting meet, and my wife had not slept very well the night before. She was actually, I had a tough time sleeping the night before, so she was nice enough to give me her weighted blanket, which was like basically putting a sheet over a parrot cage. Like, it just put me out. Unfortunately, she did not sleep very well, so she was like done. So she was dog tired, and I'm like, I am still dealing with adrenaline from today, and like 4 pounds of seafood that I ate afterwards. But so I was up watching this movie. I'm like, all right, finally, I'll give this a try. And I'm watching this, and Ronnie Coleman is tied for the most wins of Mr. Olympia. He won 8 in a row. And is tied with this other guy. I forget what his name is. I think it's like something Lahane or something like that. But his story is very interesting. But he was this guy who essentially, when you see him in his prime, this dude looks like a He-Man action figure who came to life. Like, it is ridiculous, the muscle mass that this guy has. And just the amount, like, they're talking about like the weights that he was lifting. Like, they're talking about like in pumping iron, like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Lou Ferrigno are moving around a whole bunch of weight. And they're like, Ronnie didn't even warm up with that weight. Like, that was even like their top weights was stuff that he was already above that.
Yeah.
And at one point they're showing him, and I realize he's using 200-pound dumbbells. I'm like, I didn't even know they made 200-pound dumbbells. Jeez. He's got one in each hand and using them to like dumbbell bench press. Just ridiculous amounts of strength in this guy. But because of that, his body has broken down. Like, he's had back issues. He's had, compressed and ruptured discs and all of this stuff. And I'm always very interested in kind of greatness / excellence and what it takes to get there, and, how people got there. And then also, what are the pitfalls of that? What was the price that had to be paid? And man, it's crazy just looking at this guy and seeing what his body is like now, but also the fact that he's still lifting. I mean, he walks around with crutches, but he's still out training because he just loves. Yeah. That is like such a part of him. Like, bodybuilding and lifting is just his thing, and it is insane to see something like that. But it's a great story. Like, it is a very interesting story for someone who is, who could legit probably be playing the wow, 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 look at me, woe is me card. And you'd be like, totally valid. But he doesn't. Like, he's just like still a very positive individual and just kind of like still achieving and going. And it's crazy. It's inspirational / cautionary. Yeah. Like, maybe it isn't the biggest thing that you squat 800 pounds. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's a really well done documentary, and like I said, it's a very interesting guy, and also, like I said, cautionary and inspirational all at the same time. So check that out on Netflix if you are so inclined.
Nice.
Well, thank you all to all the members of the Free Range Idiocy congregation. We do certainly appreciate you tuning in and listening. Parting is such sweet sorrow, but yes, it's time for us to get up on the hell out of here. And well, for me, I got to go to bed.
He tired.
I'm telling you right now, I'm tired. I'm tired, and I'm going to be making some tea after this and schlepping off to bed very soon. But we do appreciate you all listening, and hopefully we haven't put you to sleep. That was probably, all that wrestling talk, but that continued onward because we just link everything to wrestling. But we do appreciate you tuning in. So if you want to find episodes of ours, you can go to freerangeidiocy.com, and that'll have all of our episodes. You can subscribe right through the Podbean app if you'd like. You can also find us on Apple Podcasts. We're on Pandora. We're on Spotify. We're on Google Podcasts. We're on Samsung Podcasts, all kinds of different channels. You can find us, search for Free Range Idiocy. You will find us. We are on social media. We're still not back on Twitter because they just have completely ghosted me on support. Great job, Twitter. Thanks, guys. Really sticking up for the little guys and helping. But we are on Facebook and Instagram, so you can find us at Free Range Idiocy on both of those platforms. If you have any questions, thoughts, or concerns, send those to tim@freerangeidiocy.com, and he will get back to you forthwith, if not sooner. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for us to wrap this sucker up, but not before I ask the second most important question in all of human history. The first, of course, being what is hip. The second being, what the hell did we learn this episode?
We've learned the following, sir.
Aha.
We have learned that Uncle Todd and the man they call Tim, not big fans of the full-on shoot interview a la CM Punk in a press conference after the pay-per-view. Let's keep it to theatrics. Let's keep it to, as John Moxley said in his interview or his promo on the show after, that they go out there and fight with passion and put on the best possible show they can for the fans. Let's keep it to that and leave the backstage stuff in the backstage and put on good shows, because these guys are talented and we just don't have time for this sort of ballyhoo. We've also learned
tomfoolery.
What's that?
No tomfoolery.
No tomfoolery. We've also learned, if you didn't know already, Tombstone is a favorite and now is officially dubbed a 5-tool movie. 5-tool flick.
Certified, sir. Certified.
We will be starting up a new service to rival Rotten Tomatoes called 5-Tool Flick. And
it'll be hosted on GeoCities. There's a joke for everyone over 38.
I think I'm gonna dub myself an EVP of this new company.
You go right ahead. What could possibly go wrong? I don't know. Oh, and we have also learned that the man they call Tim dabbles in audiobooks when he goes on long car rides. Just a bit. My goodness.
Consume them, I do. Consume them. With all that being said, as the Great One has already pontificated on, we do thank you for the listenership, for the downloads.
The Great One? Wait a minute. Was Dwayne Johnson on here that I know? Did I fall asleep?
I'm giving you some due. So, and I almost forgot. We have also learned that Uncle Todd is the Goldberg of his powerlifting division. Well done, sir. Congratulations.
Gilbert.
I know.
Gilbert, I told you.
I know the work you put in, and kudos to you, sir, for putting your mind to something and achieving it. Well done. Now, as I was saying,
dreams can come true.
They can. He's wearing the gold.
It could happen to you if you're young at heart.
Oh, good Lord. As we like to close things out, be safe, be healthy, be kind, be good to one another. And well, for no other good reason than the man just bench pressed and squatted and deadlifted a bunch of weight. Could you please do him a favor and hit the lights on the way out? He's done enough work for one day.
It's like I picked the wrong week to quit drinking.
I beg your pardon, what did you say?
Well, I didn't think you had it in you.
You're such a disappointing pair. I prayed so hard for you. Get out. And don't come back until you've redeemed yourselves.
So say we all.
I'm your Huckleberry.
Yeah, I gotta afford that singlet.
My back.
Let me tell you, that is the toughest part of the entire thing. Like lifting the weights, like I was fine. Like I lifted all the weight, or most of the weight that I had lifted at the competition before that. It's getting used to walking around in your underwear for like hours on end. That's the tough part.
Yeah.
You know, I would have actually felt better if I could have had the Andre like one strap singlet. I would have at least
There you go.
That would have felt better about that. Well, no, the singlet is still the like that's what they call it. Like essentially, it's a onesie, you know, which is real fun when you have to go to the bathroom. Let me tell you, it's a hoot and a holler. You better plan things really ahead of time, because otherwise, you know, you don't want to get caught in mid like disrobing and go, it's too late.
Need to be tactical. Need to be strategic.
Yes. You need to plan your poops.
Good God.
Well, it's true. You got to plan your poops.
Oh, that's what we learned today, folks.
Hey, you know what? I don't have very much wisdom to impart to the next generation, but that is one of them. Plan your poops.
There we go.
Now get the hell out of here!